Hi, I'm Howard Tullman, CEO of 1871, which is the largest startup incubator in the United States. And I'm here to talk to you about what we do every day, which is to build the future. I want to start with a little bit of bad news, which is that there's been a staggering amount of things that you know nothing about. But the good news is that it will change and will continue to change all the time. So don't worry about yesterday, focus on the future, and especially focus on tomorrow. And frankly, it's better to be a little bit uneasy than it is to disappear. And if you want to get some idea of the changes that this kind of powerful technology has brought to bear on our economy, just look at the difference between today's stock market leaders and as little as 10 years ago. The world is changing, business models are changing dramatically. In Brooklyn today, 1 million plus Uber rides every month. And yet, as soon as we think we understand a model like that, we see more changes coming up. What's happened now all over Europe and coming now to the United States is it turns out that Airbnb essentially for our private cars is happening. And so each time we see one of these changes, what we discover is that the next change is coming up right behind it. We have in Chicago over 3 million miles already of Divvy bike sharing, a tremendous opportunity. But these racks that you see are costly and sort of onerous in the sense that they take up a lot of real estate, they cost a lot of money and time. What's happening is even as bike sharing has grown, the whole world is looking at how to do this better and differently. And specifically in China, what they've done is taken the technology, gotten rid of the racks, and put the technology right on the bikes. So again, what we're seeing is each time we tend to understand a solution, the next solution is right around the corner. The future is today. And so whether it's the Dick Tracy watch, or whether it's the Jetsons with flying cars, or whether it's mirrors that will provide us with enormous information and with beauty tips, or whether it's the thing that we've seen in every movie, which is the eye control. Now we're going to see that at the airport. And in less than 2 or 3 seconds, we'll be able to verify identity. The robots are all over, whether it's a robot that follows you to work or that you can send home, whether it's a robot that delivers your new Domino's pizza. All of these things are here today and they're accelerating. But what we know for sure is that the way you've done business, the things that have worked in the past, are not going to work going forward. And this is where we're at. The future isn't going to be a little bit different. It's going to be radically and substantially different. When we look just at the issue of self-driving vehicles, we're looking at hundreds of thousands of drivers who are going to be unemployed or who are going to have to find new careers. Now, some of these people should get out of the trucks, there's no question. But Uber has just announced yet another game changer, which is that Uber is now moving into the trucking space as well. So again, each time we see one of these changes, it's just the beginning of the process. In retail, which represents 10% of the US economy, again, Amazon is announcing new stores, rolling them out all across the country. And these are amazing. These stores have no cashiers. They have no checkout lines. You use your phone, you put whatever you want in your container, and they send you a bill on your phone. JP Morgan is using bots and robotic processes to eliminate millions of transactions and hundreds of jobs. And again, this is just a process that's continuing to accelerate. We're seeing solutions that eliminate the review of redundant documents and shrink that whole process dramatically. In terms of image recognition, which has been something that's been challenging for a number of years, we're finally getting to the point where we can make sense out of images. And if you don't think this is hard, let me just tell you that it's not so easy to differentiate between the Chihuahua and the blueberry muffin, whatever you may think. But the real bottom line of this is that if your job is one that I can reduce to a set of rules or a bunch of instructions, if your job is one where the premium is on repetitive, albeit flawless execution, then a robot or a system will do that going forward. It won't be the kind of job that we'll be focused on in the future. And truthfully, if we're not learning and improving and growing our skill sets on a constant basis, we're going to be left behind. The first thing that we know for sure is that it's about speed. And today, being a big company turns out to be a burden. It turns out to be an impediment, something that keeps you from being flexible and agile and moving at the kind of speed that's essential. At 1871, we talk about being in a hurry. And if you're not in a hurry, it probably means that you're uninformed or not aware of what's going on all around you. And so when we describe change today, we have a term that's called autocatalytic. And what it means is that every time there's a change, the next change is more rapid. And this is really significant because in the not too distant past, we kept score by saying, how fast is your business? And while that's important, that's not today's metric. And the reason for that is that today we don't want to know about velocity. We want to know about acceleration. How fast is your business getting faster? And frankly, if the competition, if the people on the outside are growing their solutions, are changing their businesses more rapidly than you are, then you're going to be left behind. So when we talk about technology today, we talk about it in a different way. We don't simply say, how can these newfangled technologies help me do my business better? Because that's not enough of an inquiry. What we say is, how can it help me do things that I never imagined that I could do before? And this is the real key. If we look at 3D printing, almost every library and school in America has a 3D printer, and mostly they're melting a lot of expensive plastic, or they're fabricating Yoda, the most fabricated object out there still. But in the recent past and in the not too distant future, if you think about a car dealership, about 30% of the plastic parts that are shipped to a car dealership each week cost more to transport the part than the part cost. And so we have an opportunity on site in the moment to create those parts with no transportation cost and with very little inventory cost. And so 3D printing is coming because it permits us to do things that we simply couldn't do before. We can now build structures that are stronger than steel and lighter and less costly than aluminum. When we look at this kind of disruption, companies think that they understand the situation. What they understand very clearly is what they're doing and what their competition is doing. What they don't spend enough time looking at is what's coming in from the sides, what's adjacent to what they're doing. What are the new competitors? Uber was not a better taxi company. It was the generation and the creation of a platform that solved a set of needs in an entirely different way. And so at 1871, with 500 companies every day, what they do is they look at your business across this dimension, across this matrix of opportunities, and they say very simply, how can I change the game? How can I do this better or faster or more quickly or less expensively? How can I improve the degrees of access? And so what you need to be doing as a major corporation, as a big player in the space, is asking yourself, how can I take advantage of the skills, the specializations, the resources that I have as an organization to protect myself? How can I change the game before somebody does it to me? And that's really the bottom line, which is if you don't do this, if you don't cannibalize and change your business, then what's going to happen is someone else will change it for you. Now, if anyone should be willing to rest on his laurels, and if anyone should sort of say, all right, I have 2 billion users, I think I can take a breather, it would be this guy. And yet what he says all day long is, if we don't change Facebook, then someone else will come along and change it for us. So when we look at this opportunity set, we talk about 9 drivers, 9 things that are changing the world. And I want to share them just briefly with you because we think that this is how the world will look in the future. Number 1 is time. And the idea that we have to do everything more quickly. And I mentioned speed before. So this is a company that provides customer service in 3.5 minutes on average, customer support. Try to be in a business that says we'll get back to you in 24 to 48 hours, and you discover that you won't be in business much longer. This is a company with one of the ugliest display booths in the world, but it downloads a movie to your laptop at the airport in 1 to 3 minutes. Pretty amazing. And only Amazon would say 1 to 3 minutes, pretty slow. So what is Amazon doing? Well, they're shipping you things that you haven't even bought yet. Now, how do they do this? First, they look at what you previously bought. They look at wish lists. They look at a lot of different things. But the real focus is on what we call cursor hover time. And what that is digital drooling. That's you looking into the computer while they're looking out at you and measuring what are you doing and creating new incentives and different pricing strategies and couponing. And then, of course, they'll ship it to you in a flash. And it's that kind of responsiveness that is going to set the curve and set the bar for every kind of business. In messaging, we're seeing that it is overtaking email in every respect, and the reason is pretty simple. We don't open our emails anymore, and we don't respond to them in a timely fashion. Messages are interruptive, we respond to them in real time, and it's the way the world is going. In terms of new forms of commerce, here's a company that sells LPs basically in 2 seconds. Each day you get a text, it says, do you want to buy this or not? If you say yes, you own it. If you say no, that's the entire transaction. And think about how difficult it is for a competitor to get in the middle of a transaction like that. Same thing with lunch. You can order lunch in the morning, have about 10 selections, press the button to respond to the text. Lunch will be there at noon. No fuss, no muss, and by the way, you're not looking at 16 other alternatives. So all of this is part of what we call the right now economy. People don't want to wait, and they don't want to wait for anything. And we're not talking about not wanting to wait for hours. These are people that don't want to wait for minutes. And the reason is we're walking around with these powerful tools, our phones. They give us more and more information. They permit us to make better decisions. We're building systems that permit products and services to talk, to supply information to us, and that can be in the grocery store, it can be at the bus stop, it can be at the train station, it can be at the stadium. For the Philadelphia 76ers, we just created a really interesting new solution. You look at a jersey through your phone, up pops a buy button, you press the button, and the jersey will be at your home before you're out of the parking lot at the end of the game. Now, what's the message here? Well, the message is really simple. You have to be there when the buyer is ready to buy. And each time there's a change in the buyer's life, and it doesn't matter what the service is, what happens is that the buyer tends to transfer that expectation to everything else in their lives. They're not going to wait 3 hours for something if they know that Amazon can deliver it in 15 minutes. And so what happens is what we took for granted in the recent past is now, so what? That was yesterday's news. What have you done for me lately? And as I said, nobody wants to wait for anything. So in online, what's going on now more and more is we're ordering online, but we go pick it up about 50% of the time. So you'll see more drive-throughs and on-site ordering and curbside pickups. But again, as I said before, every time you think you understand what's going on, Amazon changes the game again. So this is the dash button. The dash button cost about $1. And what you do with this thing, and they'll give you the $1 back by the time you press the button for the first time, you put this on your washing machine, and when you're done with the Tide, you press the button, and on your doorstop in about an hour and a half will be a new container of Tide. Now ask yourself this question. Do you have any desire to know what you paid for the Tide? Do you even know what you paid for the Tide? No, because what was driving that was speed and convenience and ease. And more than 200 brands are now using this technology to just order on demand. Now, most of the time it's obvious where to put the button. Sometimes it's not really clear, but the idea is the same. And so they've also virtualized these buttons, and so they're on your computer now. And the bottom line of this is a really interesting new way that we measure how successful businesses are going to be. And we call this the customer effort score. You should look at your business. You should look at your website or your mobile app. We think of those as your front door. And you should ask this question. How easy is it? How many steps? How many cues? How many prompts? How easy is it to do business with your business? And if it's not easy, I'll go somewhere else. Now, what permits us to be so successful in doing this is data. We now know that there's a very clear and measurable connection between commerce and advertising. We didn't know before, but today we do. And so we're moving from a world where we just look backwards to a world where we're getting ahead of consumer behavior, where we're able to predict and influence it in amazing ways. Google is better at predicting real estate trends now than the real estate industry is. The credit card companies are plenty creepy, but it's even worse now. They're predicting early divorces. How do they do this? Okay? Well, same city hotel charges, flowers sent to a place that isn't your home, singles bars, and exercise. Now, why do they do this? Well, they are perverts, but that's not why they do this. They do this because people change their behavior. And so as soon as you say, oh, that's my ex-spouse's charges, then the credit card company is going to have to chase you. So they're building systems that actually taper the ability to make these special spends and make it less possible to do that when they see this kind of behavior. Getting ahead of the consumer, taking advantage of the fact that today the internet really permits us to measure and hold people accountable in ways that never existed before. And so going forward, businesses are going to be measured just in two dimensions, two words: transparency, which means everybody, your competitors, your customers, your employees will know how you do your business, and efficacy, which means they'll know how well you do your business. And frankly, if you're not the best, if you're not constantly improving, they've got a million choices and they'll simply go elsewhere. And so when we talk about loyalty today, a lot of businesses think there are sunk costs. They think that customers are locked in. They think customers aren't going anywhere. To us, loyalty means an amazingly simple thing. It means you just haven't shown me something better yet. And if you do, I'm gone. And so you need to figure out how to keep raising the bar, how to keep cannibalizing yourself, how to keep getting your business better, or else I'm going somewhere else. And you have to figure out how to get me to pay attention, how to get me to focus that scarce time I have amidst all the noise, all the clutter. How do you make me interested in what you're doing? Because today you're not simply competing against a couple of specific competitors. You're competing against the noise in our world. You're competing against everything that takes away from attention, engagement, commitment. And to give you an idea about how fleeting this is and how sort of short the attention span is today of the consumer, this is the new Tic Tac. And they were so worried that mid-suck you would lose interest that they changed the flavor. Now, this is pretty frightening, okay? And it's not getting better. Yale did a survey not too long ago comparing our attention span to the goldfish, and we were pretty much a push, but they updated it just recently. The goldfish is holding its own, we're losing, okay? And so what do we do today? What does a business have to do in order to connect to the consumer? Well, you have to pay for my attention, not with money, but you have to show me a reason to do business with you. You have to show me a focus, save me time, save me money, help me be more productive, help me make better decisions. If you do that, then you've established a connection that's not going to go away because somebody runs a clever ad or somebody offers even a reduced price. Price is less of a driver today than it's ever been. But another thing about this attention thing that's so interesting is helping us with more and more choices doesn't really help us be better decision makers. And so as an example, Head & Shoulders had 26 versions of their product, flavors, variations, all kinds of different things. They just reduced it significantly by about 11 different versions, got them off the shelves, and their sales increased. Okay? Because this fiction that we're going to give you infinite choices doesn't help you decide. It makes it harder for you to decide. And then two other dimensions that are important. Engagement, also important. It turns out today, amazingly, that the context in which I'm talking to you is more important than what I'm saying. Now, we know this as parents because we give our kids all this tremendous advice, but of course, if they're not listening, it doesn't really matter. But the idea of understanding the value and the significance of the channel is critical today. We call this smart reach. And what that means is that you have to figure out how to reach me with engaging, customized, specific content when I'm ready, the time and place that I'm ready. What do I need? When do I need it? Wherever I am, and without asking. And one of the new and really exploding companies in Chicago is called Outcome Health, and they figured out that they can provide in the doctor's waiting room more information to patients than the doctor provides, because the doctor has no time. And so what we're seeing is people figuring out, where do I deliver the information? How do I deliver it? How do I catch you in the moment and answer your concerns and your questions? And by the way, it's not TV. TV is toast. In the old world tonight, TV, maybe 22 million people will be on TV. 1.8+ billion people will be on Facebook today across the entire globe. And what we're seeing is the people that matter are shifting increasingly away from TV. We're all reducing the pure, scheduled, traditional TV viewing. It's split by age, but here's what's really scary. The digital natives, who we would say are the folks 34 and under, as opposed to us, we're digital immigrants, The natives are about 50-50 already, and they're not coming back. They're not going to age into TV. They're just going to disappear from TV entirely because they're already on their way out the door. And so when you look at strategies like this, when you look at digital advertising and what's going on in terms of mobile and the growth in mobile as a channel, and you see that today more and more of the obligation that you have is not to start with TV, but to start with where the audience is, and the audience is mobile and digital today, and then work backwards. It's very, very critical to build that into your plan. Nobody has enough money to be stupid about spend, and so when we think about this, we think about how do I make it work best for me? And frankly, TV is one size fits all, and it's a formula for failure. When we look at the digital world, we can have 10 or 20 different instances. Fox News just announced an amazing thing. They're going to run 15 or 20 versions of a new ad on digital channels, and then they're going to tell you which one worked best and tell you that that's the one to run on traditional TV. So these new systems are not just marketing tools, they're research tools as well. And they permit you to do a lot of important things, one of which is to understand that digital distribution is not redundant. So you might not buy 4 magazines that address the same traditional publication audience, but in digital you are taking advantage of the fact that we're connected, and we're connected across multiple devices. So in this world of connectivity, we're all connected. The kids are super connected, but so are we. About 80% of us look at our phone within 15 minutes of getting up in the morning. I don't frankly know what the other 20% are doing. I think they're lying. But in any event, we look at our phone more than 160 times a day. That turns out to be 3.5 hours, and it's not just the phone. The car is connected now. There's a million things to do in the car. When we go into the stores, we're trackable in new ways. We can now measure you in a bricks and mortar environment. For the last 10 years, the online guys knew who you were, and the bricks and mortar people had no idea. But we can see whether an end cap is working. We can see which aisles you're in. We can see whether our windows are pulling you in. How long are you staying? Are you a frequent customer? And all of these are because we now are surrounded and carrying connected devices. This is the internet, not just of things, but of everything. And so whether it's the smart home or the smart car, or it's Disney giving you a smart band that not only opens your room and pays for your food and gets you special access, but increasingly provides personalized information about you and your family, so Goofy will know your kids by name. And this idea of using tracking is just exploding. We did it recently in Vegas on the waitresses to make sure they were addressing the right populations within the place. They called back and said we want it on our security people, we need it on our maintenance people. And on the football field, what you'll see this season is that increasingly it'll be the computer, not the coach, that says, this guy's tired. He ran the last 2 snaps slower than he should have. The machine told us that, and so he needs to come out of there. And so smart devices are exploding. We're seeing now smart garbage cans. Every morning, these tell the truck what the route should look like, because they say you don't have to stop here because that can is empty. Huge benefit. Very direct, powerful change in what's going on. And so these kinds of devices that help us get smarter are growing. This is a wallet that knows your budget. And so as the month goes by, it gets harder and harder to open the wallet, a very powerful and significant thing. So where are we? Well, we're surrounded by an abundance of noise and content and activity and eyeballs. But what we need, and the businesses that really drive the future, are going to help us be smarter, help us focus our time, our attention, make us more productive, drive engagement. And frankly, if we don't make it easy for these companies, then these companies will not be in business anymore, and these customers will simply go elsewhere. And so the bottom line of all of this is, if you want to look to the future, if you want to protect your business, if you want to build your business, you have to have strategies around 3 ideas. It has to be a consistent set of offerings. It has to be persistent in that it can't be obnoxious and invasive, but it has to be inclusive and pervasive in the sense that the technology is going to help make things easier, better, and quicker. And then lastly, it has to be resistant to change, to disruption. And the only way you do that is to be a moving target and keep moving up and forward if you want to save and protect your business.